all the units that for 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting
Police radio thing's kind of dramatic. I mean, you know, where you're actually hearing the dispatch say, as per Chief of Patrol, we're not responding.
Yeah.
And then there's another guy that comes on who's called the watch commander.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "You're right. We're under orders not to respond."
This is Heroes Behind the Badge. What you just heard was real Chicago dispatch audio. Officers were ordered to stand down while federal agents came under fire. And that raised a question every cop dreads. When do you obey and when do you act?
And then we have a couple of bits for the superintendent where he just flat out denies this. And then he says something like, well, you can't always believe what you hear on the police radio.
Yeah.
I love that one. What most of the cops heard was that dispatch channel.
And as you know, you rode with me enough times that, you know, at least in TNT, you know, like nobody was monitoring our radio traffic and telling us what to do. But nonetheless, at what point do you ignore orders? At what point are they unlawful orders?
Yes.
And to take that further, when does it become misfeasance and malfeasance, which are civil and criminal?
And, you know, nobody is better equipped than Steve Sun to talk about the political nature of policing today. That's exactly what he got caught up in on January 6th.
Yeah.
Exactly.
From Citizens Behind the Badge, this is Heroes Behind the Badge.
The thing that Billy Erfurth just brought up, when can the rank and file ignore an order from the Chief of Patrol? That's a great question. That's a Steve Sun question. Let's see what he says about that.
Waving off all the cars heading to 39th Place in Kedzie.
Yeah.
Welcome back, man. It's boy, a lot has happened since we saw you last.
I'll tell you, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It is. Whether you're looking at the federalization of National Guard, or you're looking at what's going on over in Portland and Chicago, and who knows? I thought he was in line to send troops out to Memphis.
I think he did. I think he already sent troops to Memphis.
I think something's going on there.
Well, he got the approval of the governor and I think the mayor there, but in Portland and in Chicago, of course, he's fighting the political guys.
Yep. So. The governor, I think, of Tennessee had requested him. I think the mayor reluctantly accepted it.
Okay. Yeah.
And the mayor is not totally supportive.
No, in Memphis.
At all supportive.
In Memphis? Yeah, no. But no, I didn't get that impression, but the citizens are.
That's what matters.
Yeah, so he's not being stupid, although you would think that would matter. Johnson, I think Brandon Johnson, Mayor Johnson, I'd heard his approval rating was around 4% right now.
That high?
Single digits.
Is it that high? I didn't realize.
A lot of
going up a percentage point.
He is.
So, Steve, the last time we talked, you were eloquent in discussing in great detail the events of that fateful day, January 6th. A lot has happened. Trump has been not nominated. He's been sworn in again. He pardoned all the January 6th people. We had talked about it on that podcast, but it hadn't actually happened yet. And of course, we now you wanted just some National Guard to bail you guys out, to give you a break. And now we got National Guards everywhere.
I know. So, think about it. Yeah. All I wanted was some unarmed National Guard on a perimeter, and couldn't get that. And here you are. He's there deploying them all over.
I was in D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and I was down at Union Station and walking in Union Station, and 25 of them walked right by me in formation. They were some kind of a platoon, and 25 of them walked right by me. They were in every park, at every monument, everywhere.
But the most important thing is Did you feel safe at Union Station?
Totally. 100%.
Yeah, there was a time just 8, 9, 10 months ago that wouldn't have happened. Nobody liked coming to Union Station.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't a safe place to hang out.
Well, I was in there on a Friday night, so as you know, a lot of people are coming and going on a Friday night. The congressional people are going, and people are coming in, and it was very busy and very safe. So I felt extremely safe. So and I want to remind everybody, if you haven't heard on the Heroes Behind the Badge podcast, I think Boomer, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we had 3 episodes with Steve, right? 3 episodes.
We did.
3 episodes. If you haven't heard those, Steve Sun was our first guest. Remember, he is the former chief of Capitol Police. He before that, he was 25 years, decorated, highly successful, top officer at Washington Metro PD, and moved over in 2017 to the Capitol Police. You got to hear Steve's story. I hope you've read the book, Courage Under Fire. Anybody who's interested in what the hell's going on in policing today, particularly if you're concerned about the politicization of police, you have got to read Steve's book and you have to listen to the podcast. Because right now, everything that Steve's son lived through on that awful day in January is coming full circle, is it not, Steve? All of a sudden, the politics overcome the policing. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you're seeing what I dealt with on a facility level. You're dealing with it on a national level. It's crazy, and I appreciate you guys all the support from all of you, and the fact that I was able to be on a couple of times, and the pushing of the book. And I'll tell anybody that's interested, get the paperback. Paperback came out last December, and even since it came out, even since it went to print, more information has come out, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. The pipe bombers are going to be bombers are going to be found. That's going to be interesting, but interesting time. So so here we are. January 6th. What I'd requested in advance of January 6th was unarmed National Guard to help support my perimeter. Couldn't get those. Was denied those. Denied again any support from my men and women for 73 minutes on January 6th. And now National Guard are being deployed to a number of cities, and rightly so. A number of these cities are out of control. They definitely need assistance, and they're out of control because of poor legislation, poor policy that's been put in place by city councils and politicians. That's really driven staffing in their law enforcement agencies down as people leave and don't want to be part of their agencies. So now they're seeing a rise in crime, and they can't control it, nor do they want to admit it.
So it's pretty interesting, Steve. And, just to go back to the January 6th thing, and then we're going to jump into what's going on in Chicago, Los Angeles, Memphis, some other spots, perhaps with the National Guard. But, you look at this and it becomes political expediency. You look at some of these politicians that literally choose politics over safety, and specifically, let's talk about Chicago real quick, and then we'll go back to January 6th. Let's talk about the murders that are going on in Chicago. Every weekend, you look and you see it's got 50 shootings and 5 or 6 murders, and now you've got politicians that are adamantly fighting against wanting to have the National Guard support the police in the city. And to me, that's like having blood on your hands. If you're a politician that's picking politics and their personal rise to fame, or whatever they want to consider that, over homicide, they're politicians picking politics over homicide, essentially. And it's unbelievable to me. Like, who wouldn't want to fight crime, right?
You're absolutely right, and it's. I'll distill it down even further. It's people's lives over politics over people's lives, and it comes down to they don't want somebody else to point out the problems that they've been in charge of for years, and they really don't want somebody like President Trump to be the one pointing that out and then coming in to save the day and correct what they should have been correcting years ago. And you see this in a lot of Mayor Brandon Johnson's community meetings over and over and over again. You have community members coming out saying, we're being subjected to violent Venezuelan crimes, gangs. I can't go outside. People are being shot right down the street, and he's in complete denial that this is happening. So he'll tell you it's a safe area. They're not having any crime. And now you've got Governor Pritzker and you've got Mayor Johnson, filing lawsuits against the Trump administration, as well as a number of other states, about the deployment of resources he's deploying into the community to try and help those people that are in those community meetings not getting any help from their elected officials. So I think it comes down to a matter of politics. These people don't want to admit the problem that they've created, they've been in charge of, and definitely don't want this administration to be the one riding in on the white horse to fix it.
Exactly. Steve, one of the reasons we had you on today, there was a recent incident in Chicago that's getting a lot of national attention. It's created quite an uproar. It involved ICE agents in Chicago trying to arrest illegal aliens. All right. Some of the worst of the worst. These people have committed heinous crimes. And ICE agents are trying to rid our nation of those heinous individuals. So when this incident occurred, ICE agents were under siege. All right. There were protesters, but really what it was is they were surrounded and they were assaulted by so-called protesters. Bottom line is they needed help. One of the cars that rammed their vehicle had a guy in there with a assault rifle. All right, this guy was out for menacing purposes. They were in danger of their lives, so they called for help from the Chicago Police Department. Officers were dispatched to assist them. They were surrounded by about 30 people, by the way, including this guy with the assault rifle. And while they were en route to save those officers' lives, assist them in getting out of this terrible situation, they were told to stand down by order of the chief of patrol for the Chicago Police Department. And even the dispatcher was shocked to hear this. I mean, she said, well, wait a minute, they're surrounded. They need help. And they were told, no, we don't want any of our officers near them. Stand down. How do you react to that? I mean, you're a former top official with the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. You were the U.S. Capitol Police Chief, and your officers are being told to stand down while trying to come to the aid of other federal officers in terrible danger. How do you respond to that? It's unthinkable, really.
Yeah, it's unconscionable. It's absolutely terrible to see what happened. And let's look at that a little even closer. So that occurred on a Saturday morning, about 10:30 in the morning. The caravans driving through the streets of Chicago. They're not on federal territory. They're in the streets, the primary jurisdiction of the Chicago Police Department. I think they're in the 3900 block of I think it's called Kedzie Avenue. When they get surrounded and one car starts ramming one of the vehicles, they actually get into a shooting with a female in one of the cars. I think she got out also. I think she was armed as well. So you have shots fired. She's fleeing. One of the ICE agents, from what I understand, calls 911, calling for help. And they initially dispatch officers to help them. And then, like you said, Chief of Patrol comes over. The dispatch comes over and says, directions, Chief of Patrol, do not respond. You even had some officers that were stuck there that then had to find ways to get out. That is unacceptable, that you have officers under fire and being called off. That's the worst of the politics right there. You get concerned that who are they picking to put in charge of some of these police agencies, and what are the criteria that they're using to pick them? Are they picking them because they're true blue cops? They know how to do their job, and they know how to run an agency. They know how to be leaders. Or are they picking them because they're the right political fit for the city council, the mayor, and whoever else it may be? Because I keep hearing law enforcement officers are leaving primarily because of poor leadership. So here you have an opportunity for officers to come, and I know Chicago is second largest police department in the country, definitely in the top 5. You have no doubt these officers want to help the fellow officers, and they're being called off. There's a lot of concerns there. And let me go on even further. So this morning you have today President Trump put on Truth Social that both Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson should both be placed under arrest and placed in jail for failing to respond.
Yep.
Which is an interesting concept, because the Supreme Court's looked at it. Is there a constitutional duty to protect? So the Supreme Court's actually come out and said, there's really no constitutional duty to protect, and I'm going to look at this from a couple different angles, and except for a couple extreme circumstances. One of the circumstances is if the state has helped develop the environment in which the danger or the situation occurred. And I'd be one to say, you look at the politics, you look at the policies of Chicago, you look at it as a sanctuary city. They've been allowing these immigrants to be deployed onto the streets. They're not holding them accountable. They're letting them go. If they ever do get arrested, they're letting them go right back into the community without notifying ICE and holding them on a immigration detainer. I think they have created this situation. So when the president says that, I think there is a legal issue that they may have to address. And I think if it went back before the Supreme Court, I think they'd uphold something there.
That's interesting.
Well,
You said something,
The thought
Steve.
of that is, are they actually complicit in allowing the criminality to occur and to develop, right? And one thing we should talk about and throw around here is misfeasance and malfeasance of duty. Now, I know that that's an issue within law enforcement, whether politically, what you just said about the mayor and the governor, whether they fall under those laws and categories. But, as a law enforcement officer, you swear an oath and you raise your hand and you swear an oath that you will serve and protect, and you will protect anyone. And it's a golden rule that if an officer is asking for assistance or there's an officer down, you drop everything. You might be in the middle of a crime scene somewhere else or whatever. You go. Everybody goes. And so I wonder, even with this chief of patrol, does this now focus on malfeasance of duty? Malfeasance of duty is criminal, misfeasance is civil, but somebody's going to get sued or charged here potentially. And what are your thoughts about that?
You really could have some really interesting legal actions here, especially if some of those ICE agents who were calling for assistance happen to be citizens of Chicago themselves. I mean, this gets really interesting. So yeah, malfeasance, misfeasance. So let's look at the legal aspects. And again, I think this goes to the political environment that's been created across this country. Look at the a Good Samaritan up in New York, the Marine on the metro that tried to intervene with the mental health consumer that was threatening to kill people, and he was thrown in jail. They were going after him with everything they've got. So now you have these Chicago police officers that are responding, and they have their chief of patrol tell them not to respond. These guys, obviously, they're shaking in their shoes. They want to. I have no doubt most of them probably want to go and help these people. But you've political environment scared. They're worried if they go and they disobey a directive, especially one that's this politically charged. What could possibly happen to them? What could happen to their family? I mean, the people have just are really on edge about this whole thing. So whether it's misfeasance, malfeasance, it's just a terrible situation with the way the politics have infiltrated policing and created this issue. This should be a no-brainer, mutual aid type of response. There's been some stuff where they said that, when they're responding to a federal ICE facility, that's federal property. And, even then, if you're calling a 1033 or officer needs assistance, that shouldn't matter. Right. But here, this is on the streets of Chicago and they didn't respond. Yeah, I do think if any of those ICE agents got injured, I'd be talking to an attorney probably.
Yeah, Steve, we were talking before you got on, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. When is it the right thing to do for the rank and file who know they need to help their fellow officer to disobey what they consider to be an unlawful order? I know there's all kinds of chit chat about that in the military, and it's been coming up recently in the in discussion. What's your view as a career police chief, police person? What's your view on when can they break ranks and not follow the order?
Wow, that's that's a tough one. But I'll go back to when I went through the academy. I remember going through the DC Academy. They always taught us you have to obey every order unless it was illegal, immoral, unethical.
Right.
And you could easily put this into any one of those categories. Illegal, like I just talked about. The one stipulation with the Supreme Court that being a state created issue. That's probably the more murky one. Immoral. There's plenty of people that will say it was unjust that me. I raised my hand. I swore an oath to defend against all. Threats, foreign and domestic. And here I am. I'm not even able to respond in my own jurisdiction. So it can fall into that unethical. Yeah, I swore an oath. I swore an oath to protect, and these people, needed protection. I couldn't go. The big thing there is, these officers are weighing it, like I said, internally against. Man, if I go and you've seen Chicago FOP came out, National FOP came out saying that was unacceptable. What happened? I think they'd get a lot of backing. It's just officers. They probably had a number that probably would have gone. It would have been interesting to see what happened. I guarantee you, they would have been facing the wrath of whatever the Chicago police chief, commissioner, governor, mayor, anybody could do to come down on them. Absolutely, I think you would have seen that, and I think that's what they're concerned about.
So we do know, based on what the Chicago police superintendent stated in his press briefing, that there were 28 Chicago PD personnel on the scene because they had been to be treated for tear gas, right? So they were exposed to tear gas because the feds started firing tear gas, and so they all filed reports because they were exposed to the tear gas. So apparently there were officers that were either there before the order was given and didn't hear it, perhaps, in the commotion and confusion. There were others, perhaps, that maybe they responded because they weren't listening to that particular radio channel, or whatever it may be, right? So those people were there, and we're getting conflicting stories at this point about the whole thing. It is interesting, and Steve, you mentioned about the Chicago FOP president. He came out and said, the PD is about a shell of itself from years ago, and there were several other officers that said this was one of the most embarrassing, discrediting moments of their careers. Interestingly enough, the union president did say that the chief of patrol is not very well respected or liked, has not had an exemplary career, is clearly one of the ladder climbers that chooses politics over personnel. And we all know those kind of people that would sell their mother down the river for their next promotion. That was his reputation. The district commander was asked again by the dispatcher whether, are we really doing this essentially? And he, as the FOP president stated, is a very well-liked, very well-respected commander. And he said, these are the orders I've been given. So he kind of threw that monkey off of his back and said, well, I'm not saying to do this, clearly, but it's just pathetic leadership.
Well, it just goes to show the environment that's been created there. They're so worried about politics, and that's the last thing you want to be worried about when you're sitting there trying to respond when someone's life is at stake.
Right.
Yeah, it's terrible that it's that way, honestly. And what I thought was interesting is, I don't know if it was earlier in that press briefing when you had the chief of the department come out, the commissioner or chief. And first, he came out starting to deny that there was any internal message put out regarding the chief of patrol. He said, we're going to wait for an after action. You can see him kind of stumbling over his words a little bit. That was clear CYA in action. There's no doubt about that. He realizes something bad had happened. When you now have people releasing the MDT message that was put out on the terminals in the police car, and then the audio, there's no escaping that.
Yeah.
But I absolutely agree. I think if an officer or officers had disregarded that directive, I think you would be looking at a long, probably drawn out court battle, because I think the city would have probably moved to severely discipline them or terminate them, and then you would have seen the FOP and whoever it is going to come out on the other side, and it wouldn't have been pretty for them no matter how you looked at it. But it was terrible and disgusting to see. Because I'll say, I was faced with something very similar. I mean, let's harken back to J6.
Yeah.
Here I am. I've asked twice in advance. Now I've got to go by U.S. Law to U.S. 1970. I ask on January 3rd. We don't know what's going to happen. They deny it. Okay. Now I come up to January 6th, 12:53. Stuff turns really bad on the West Front. And now I'm getting my officers beaten. I'm watching my officers being beaten from upstairs in the command center. Make my first call, and still by law, I have to get permission to bring in resources, specifically federal resources, but any resources really up onto Capitol Hill from the Capitol Police Board.
Right.
12:58, I make my first call, and I'm told they're running it up the chain. I'm making repeated calls. They're so we'll have approval any minute. I wasn't going to sit around. I was watching my officers getting beaten. It took me 2-3 minutes before I started calling my first police agency, and one of the first one was Secret Service, federal agency. I started calling all the local police that I knew and bringing in anybody that I could bring into support. These agencies that I was calling knew me. I developed those personal relationships. They weren't going to give a damn if I had the Capitol Police Board approval or not. They were going to come to assist me, and that's what I needed right then and there. It was 71, not 73 minutes. It was 71 minutes later that I'd finally get my approval. If I'd waited that 71 minutes and just said, hey, my hands are tied, by law, I can't bring any resources while I'm watching my officers getting their asses handed to them, imagine what would have happened. Imagine how bad that could have turned out to be. I'll take the consequences. What do they always say in policing? I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. I couldn't bear to see what my officers were going through one more minute. So I feel bad for the district commander, for him, saying, it's some monkeys off my shoulder. And not directing his people to go in and saying, hey, that's going to be on me then. These are federal agents being attacked. Thank God none of those agents were seriously injured or killed.
Yeah, you're right.
That would have been terrible.
What impact does it have, Steve, when the superintendent comes on and he said, well, I want to clear this up. I'm here to clear this up. And all he does is lie about it. It is a fact that there is a police radio transmission. That is fact. There is a fact that someone took a screenshot of an MDT, right? Those are facts. And he basically denied that ever happened. In fact, he said something like, well, you can't always believe what comes over the police radio. How do the troops feel about that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of respect there. I'll tell you, a lot of times when people come out and they, well, let me tell you the truth, or you prepare yourself. It may not be what you're about to hear. That guy, all of us, have been in law enforcement, realize what you hear at first is most likely going to change. Don't take what you first hear as gospel. But when you think, he had to have known. I mean, by the time he came out and did that report, the audio was all over the internet. How do you go on and I'll tell you really want to upset a lot of people, start going against your dispatchers. I thought, was trying to be as professional as possible, but for him to come out and say that didn't happen and you can't believe everything that comes over, his officers know the truth. If he had any sense of credibility, he just lost it.
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that for 999. Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
And those are the orders we're being given.
So, Steve, I want to go back to to your experiences with the National Guard. And one thing that I want to say in this interview, just so that it's out there again, is all the disinformation, the misinformation about the National Guard. I think it's become extraordinarily clear now that not only had you requested the National Guard in advance of January 6th, but Trump and a number of the main players back during that time all met in the Oval Office, and the National Guard was approved prior to January 6th. And politics being what it is, they once again politically decided to make the decision not to use the National Guard and put you, your people, and countless others in harm's way, where had they been deployed, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this, and you wouldn't have had to write a book.
You're right, and I don't even know if this came up in our previous discussion. But two aspects. One, you talk about the president, approving the National Guard. Having not been in the Oval Office when he did that, I'm a person. I'm 30 years law enforcement. I like to talk about facts. Wasn't there for that conversation, but I will tell you what I was there for. Sunday, January 3rd, after I'd been denied twice by the Capitol Police Board, by the two sergeant arms, about bringing any resources, I was contacted by the Pentagon. I was contacted. Carol Corbin called my office, spoke to one of my deputy chiefs. Carol Corbin, somebody I've worked with many times. I've sworn in thousands of National Guard troops in my career, and I'd always work with Carol Corbin. She was the program manager for the Defense Support for Civil Authorities. She had reached out to my office to find out, are we asking for National Guard support? I actually had to turn that down because I had not been given authorization to request them by law. So I had to turn it down. So I don't know what went on in the Oval Office, but I can tell you for a fact that Trump's Pentagon reached out to offer us National Guard support on January 3rd.
Incredible. So here I'm thinking about this whole thing with January 6th, and of course with you, it affected you personally, and the opportunity, the availability to use the National Guard. And now we're talking about this in Chicago, and I'm thinking, if I was the police superintendent of Chicago, or if I was the mayor and had a half a lick of common sense, I would absolutely bring them on. The more resources, the more assistance, the more help that we can get to combat crime and make our city better. Who wouldn't do that? It just is, befounding to me.
The role of any police chief, commissioner, whatever you want to call it, is to make their community and their citizens as safe as possible. And again, I go back to my experiences and go back to Washington, D.C. What we had, this all really started from the federalization of the National Guard coming into Washington, D.C. as kind of the first stepping stone. People are all up in arms. Oh, President Trump invoked Clause 740, the Home Rule Act, and he took control of the D.C. police. He almost federalized the D.C. police in 2020. But anyway, so here we are just a few months ago. He federalizes the D.C. police for 30 days, takes over and brings in National Guard and a number of other things. What people don't realize is that very similar situation has happened numerous times in Washington, D.C. I'm not talking about the federalization, the president invoking Clause 740. That's a new one, but we brought in the National Guard, we brought in ATF, we brought in DEA, we brought in FBI. We put together these task force. National Guard provided support missions like lighting. They'd come into the communities. They'd provide lighting in these communities. We did it during the 1990s, during Safe Streets, when we had the highest homicides in the country. We did it many times over the last several years during the summer crime initiatives. We'd bring them in and we'd put these task force together and go out there and fight crime in the community. But here, because it's politicized and you have the president saying he wants to make Washington, D.C. safe, everyone now all of a sudden comes out against it, and everybody's suing the Trump administration for it. This has happened before. And a lot of times it's very effective. When you can bring these resources to bear on the crimes that you have, the biggest problems that we've had in Washington, D.C. and they're having in other communities is the ability to go after some of your most violent illegal aliens. They've always had trouble doing that in Washington, D.C. because, we're a sanctuary city. You couldn't ask people's immigration status. You couldn't share their information with the Customs Border Patrol. You couldn't transport. If Customs Border Patrol stopped somebody and said we need to take them to Central Cell Block for processing, we weren't even allowed to transport for them. So that creates a major issue. When you now have that capability to come in, and I've talked to a lot of DC police that were there when ICE was going in and placing a number of people under arrest. These were people that DC police had seen as problems for a period of time. You have these kids that roll around these scooters through traffic. They're driving recklessly, and all DC police can do is go in and grab the scooters for unregistered vehicle. Now they're able to grab the scooters, and ICE can grab the offenders, and they're finding these people are carrying guns. They're involved in other crimes, robbery, stuff like that. So it becomes very effective. So I agree with you. Why wouldn't any police chief or mayor say, "Hey, this is great. I'm all about it"? I mean, hats off to Mayor Bowser. She, I think, saw the benefit and realized the importance of trying to work together. Even though now that I think they're trying to stop it again. Even though all that National Guard's doing is beautification processes in the city. But you would think they would any city, whether it's Memphis, Portland, Chicago, would see this as an added benefit. Their staffing's down. This is an opportunity to fight crime in the neighborhoods and the communities. And judging by what happened in Washington, D.C., look at the crime numbers. Carjackings down 87%, violent crimes down 40%, overall crimes down a quarter. That's some sizable numbers.
So what about your buddies at the PD there in Washington? How are they talking about it? What conversations have you had with them?
Yeah, I've been down to talk to them right when it first started, even and while it progressed, they were seeing good results. They were seeing really good arrests. They finally felt like the shackles had been taken off, and they can go out and do their job. They can actually go out and do what needed to be done. The big thing they're pushing for now is they would love to see this continue. They'd love to see the crime rates drop like they are. The big thing they want to see is some of these legislation that has been put into effect, the Second Chance Amendment Act, that's allowing juveniles up to the age of 24 to get out and be released right into the street. You had a 21-year-old kid shoot at somebody at point blank range on a city bus and was back out in the community at sentencing. He was sentenced to 4 years, and the judge said, I'm going to go ahead and invoke the leniency under the Second Chance Act and put him right back into house arrest and back into the community. So they want to see that change. They want to see some legislation that the anti-police city council has passed during the 2019, 2020, the police amendments, because those have really tied the hands of the police and are imposing some really, really draconian penalties for police officers that are out there just doing their job.
Is DC still a sanctuary city, Steve, or have they abandoned that?
They're still technically a sanctuary city, even though Mayor Bowser is working to remove the term sanctuary off the law, remove that law. There's still policies in place. There's still a DC law that says DC police will not cooperate with immigration customs enforcement. So technically they're still a sanctuary city.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So when we say sanctuary city, Steve, there is policies that are implemented to enforce that fact. And that would be what? What are officers restricted from doing that makes them a sanctuary city?
So officers cannot ask somebody's immigration status. So if I pull somebody over, I can't ask them, what's their immigration status? Are they a green card holder? Are they here illegally? Even if they came up and said they're here legally, I can't take them into custody. There's really no charge that we can place on them. If ICE puts a detainer on them, the police department doesn't honor the detainers except for very, very, very few and extremely violent. And I don't even know about those, but that's what I've heard. And like if ICE calls, they're making a number of arrests and they need help transporting people. We're forbidden from putting any ICE people, detained individuals that are not charged with any other crimes. We can't transport them. So those are just some of the things that creates an issue for the law enforcement in that type of sanctuary city environment.
Yeah, let me just remind people at this point. Number one, we want to thank Steve Son for coming back. He was our very first guest on Heroes Behind the Badge, and here he's back again and enlightening us on some of the topics of the day. We should do this more often. A lot of stuff's going on that we can talk about.
You can just sit around. Law enforcement seems to be in the news every single day.
Every day.
And I think people are just looking for some guidance, and I think leaders are looking for guidance in, really what do they need to do? We got a lot of young leaders out there, and they need to start realizing they need to do the right thing. But anyway, sorry about Bill. Sorry, Dennis, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. I just wanted to remind everybody that Heroes Behind the Badge, our podcast the one you're listening to, is brought to you by citizensbehindthebadge.org. Citizens Behind the Badge is the leading voice of the American people in support of the men and women of law enforcement. You can get involved, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of your fellow Americans have already done, by going on citizensbehindthebadge.org, or some people call it .org. Okay. And on there, you will find ways to get involved. Okay. And if you like what Steve Sund is telling us today, if you're enjoying this podcast, hit subscribe, follow, and like. That way, you will never miss a new episode. And we're always releasing new episodes, right, Producer Paul? Producer Paul is working feverishly in the background to get all kinds of new episodes out. This will be out soon. We're recording this, and I think, Paul, a few days, maybe a week? I don't know. I don't want to put him on the spot, but we're going to get this out as soon as possible. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. Check us out and get involved.
Absolutely, Dennis. And talking about Chicago, let's jump back to Chicago and talk a little bit more about the city itself. You know, it's interesting because the nickname for Chicago now is Chirac. You know, and why is it called Chirac? Well, because it's a shooting gallery there, right? And so here's an interesting little story. So I have a friend that works for a police company, and they supply what's called Shot Spotter. And Shot Spotter is basically technology that can kind of pinpoint and identify where gunfire is originating from. And these shot spotters are installed in urban areas like Chicago, like Miami, like Detroit, like Washington, D.C. And they're put on rooftops, or they're put up on, poles, whatever it may be. They're very effective, and they alert the police immediately. They can give coordinates and directions as to where the gunfire is originating from. But lo and behold, Chicago used to have Shot Spotter. But now that the current mayor is there, they no longer have Shot Spotter. And it wasn't that it was a budgetary issue, because they had it already. It's just a political issue. And once again, it's a politician playing God with people's lives. Unbelievable. So, Steve, I'm sure you're familiar with Shot Spotter. You want to comment a little bit about that?
Yeah, Shot Spotter, very effective geolocating gunshot detection system. A lot of agencies are actually starting to dial in their CCTV cameras that they have deployed into the neighborhoods to the Shot Spotter. So if Shot Spotter detects something at a certain corner and you have a camera in the area, it'll actually pan to where that shot came from. Great effective use of technology. Why you wouldn't want to keep that technology in your community? It can only say that you don't want to face the reality of the number of detections it's going to be reporting. You don't want that information out there so people can, get it and put it into reports. Yeah, it's sad you wouldn't want that type of technology. And what other technology could be out there that would help that they're turning down as well? I don't know. He's not very popular. His citizens seem pretty upset with him. So who knows what the future brings there.
Look, at the end of the day, the guy's a buffoon, right? He's a moron. This guy is like absolutely him and Beetlejuice, Lori Lightweight, that was the mayor before them. They both got political pawns to be their police superintendents, each one of them. I have a very good friend from Chicago, from a super prominent family there that goes back from the early days of Chicago. It is absolutely unbelievable what's going on in Chicago and how that city is just being destroyed by absolute political clowns.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm waiting for DOJ to step in. I mean, right now the city of Chicago is under one consent decree. requirement from 2019 that talks about the requirement. When you look at it, it actually requires, what does it say? It says ensure equitable policing and timely response to emergencies. Well, I wonder if they're in violation of that one. I'd be looking at, maybe some other consent decrees on them. But the other thing I'd be looking at is the federal funding they get. Chicago gets between $1 to $200 million a year. Yeah, their budget is close to $2 billion, but still, that's a substantial amount. I wouldn't be surprised if you see the federal government saying, if you're not going to help us, you're going to lose that funding.
Yeah, you just got to feel for the cops that are working. The good cops on that department have to just be so frustrated. And again, after this latest incident, there were a number of comments about never felt so embarrassed in my life. And I think the Chicago PD, if I'm not wrong here, they're down like several thousand cops on that department, and I'm sure that this will just be another incident where they're going to lose more people.
Oh, they're definitely down. I don't know what the numbers are. They've been down since 2014 or 19. Their numbers are definitely down. What's interesting is, I don't know if you remember, the Mayor Johnson had been interviewed by somebody in the media, and the person kept turning to him saying, "Hey, if you had 5,000 more cops, would that help?" And he repeatedly kept refusing to answer the question. No, we need more social justice programs. We need more assistance, housing assistance, for it. Let me tell you, these people doing carjackings, they're not carjacking a car to go to work to pay the mortgage. So that's not going to help much. So he's complete, denial of what's happening. And the fact that he wouldn't even talk about, bringing his force up to full strength, which, anybody that, is looking at the crime stats and your loss of personnel, those are things you'd be looking at. And I'll tell you, anybody at Chicago that was on the bubble about leaving probably just made a decision over this last weekend.
Yeah, it didn't help, did it? I was just looking up the numbers here while we're talking. The Chicago police has had fewer sworn officers on duty than budgeted. They've got around 11,500 sworn members as of late 2024. They face a significant officer shortage. They have a huge backlog of high priority 911 calls that go unanswered because of lack of available officers, nobody available for rapid response or weekend coverage. As you mentioned, Steve, attrition. A lot of guys are leaving CPD, some moving to other departments, leaving the profession entirely. So, wow, that's pretty bleak, isn't it?
Well, it goes back again to the Chirac comic. When you have a city that's facing more shootings on a weekend basis, more deaths than you have in some war-torn countries, and this is the United States of America, that is unacceptable. That needs to be addressed. And we just.
I mean, how embarrassing if you're running the show there. How embarrassing that you're being called Chirac. Like if I was the boss there, I would be cleaning that up ASAP. And quite frankly, a lot of their problems that they have right now, and Steve, you hit on it about how he doesn't want additional cops. If I took a team of tactical people into certain neighborhoods and certain areas of that city in a month, I know we could change it exponentially.
You're hired, Billy. Go do it. Go do it.
No, it's just
do it.
It's shameful. It's so shameful.
Yeah, it's a matter of identifying the problem, motivating your officers, and getting them out there into the field. And again, calling in your federal partners to assist you. Oh, you know how many people would come out and help right now? Oh, you'd see crime drop right away.
That makes too much sense, Steve. That's too reasonable.
And Dennis, you hit it. You brought up the statistics, and you are absolutely right, because you said that Chicago PD staffing is around 11,000. Well, full staffing for that police department is supposed to be 16,000.
16,000. Yeah. So we beat up Chicago pretty good here today, and I'm not saying it's not deserved, but you know what? I want to publicly say right on this podcast, we'd love for somebody from Chicago, the mayor, the superintendent of police, whoever, come on our podcast. Come visit us. Maybe we'll have Steve's son also back to talk to you. He may not want to talk to those guys. I don't know. That's possible. But I'm inviting someone from Chicago to come on and tell your side of the story. Come on. Get in touch with us.
Absolutely. And Steve, let's talk about you real quick here. So talk about what you're doing these days. How's the book? All those things. What's going on?
Um, so what am I doing these days? I'm doing a little bit of security consulting. I started my own LLC. I think a lot of people do that. The Sun Group LLC. Getting out there, just doing some reviews of security plans. Doing a lot of discussions with technology companies about how technology can be integrated into supporting first responders a lot more. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I'm actually really enjoying that, and still doing a lot of public speaking. I've been asked by a couple agencies to come out and talk. I'll be down in Florida at Tampa talking at a Veterans Day event coming up here shortly. As a matter of fact, I think Governor DeSantis may be closing out the event, which will be nice. So doing a lot of that, enjoying it. The book seems to be doing well. I still have people regularly coming up to me and that I've never even met and asking me to sign it. Still getting a lot of calls from down the hill. You have the new January 6th committee. Well, it's still Chairman Barry Loudermilk's committee reconstituted. It's going to be in effect for another congressional cycle. So they're going to be looking back into things. They've already reached out to me and said, I may be down there as one of their first witnesses. We'll see. They've heard my story. My story doesn't change. So we'll see where we go, but I'm always happy to keep supporting it. And again, I start taking notes. There's still, I don't know, it may be a whole nother book. I sat back and thought about maybe writing a book about just my whole history. It's a really unique law enforcement history. I've had the opportunity, even when Jimmy Carter was alive, I had protected every living president. Jimmy Carter, when I was a brand new officer, came out to do Habitat for Humanity. That's how I got to do him when he wasn't president at the time. But needless to say, some of the stuff I've had to do, been able to do as a police officer, traveling around the world with Secret Service, doing a number of active shooters, a number of major events. There's a lot of lessons to be learned there. So I'm thinking about maybe doing another book in that area and kind of seeing where it goes. But there's definitely going to be another edition of The Courage Under Fire because so much more keeps coming out. More, I think, information is getting ready to break. Mark my words. I think, October 8th right now? I'd say by November 8th. I think there's going to be some big news about the whole January 6th investigation coming out.
Whoa! Breaking news! Breaking news!
I would hope so. Well, hey, Steve, have you been out to dinner with Nancy Pelosi recently?
Hold on, just a sec. Nope, no missed calls. Yeah, we're not out there playing pickleball. No.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No.
How nice is it to be vindicated, though, huh?
It is. It is nice to be vindicated. I know Chairman Loudermilk and some other members of Congress are looking at restoring the benefits that were stripped from me when I was forced to resign. We'll see where that goes. I think there's some good possibility there. I'm just, more members that I can get supporting it is great. I think getting some support from the executive branch or the executive office of the president would be very beneficial. So we'll see how that goes. But I always stay positive. If nothing else, people will tell you about me, and I still. When I tell you I talk to Capitol Police officers every day, I talk to them every single day. Even today, I've talked to some, whether it's DC Police, Capitol Police, or police across the country. These people are out there. They're doing the hard job. They're going to work every day. I still think policing is a noble and honorable profession that just needs the right leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm just not your sergeants, your lieutenants, your captains, but also your city council, your mayors. Everyone needs to be on the same page when it comes to people's safety and security and stop playing games with it in a political fashion. That's resounding. I keep hearing that across the country, and whatever I can do to help continue to support that, I definitely will.
Yeah. I liked your idea about talking about the career before January 6th, because what people forget is you had a 25-year, highly decorated, highly successful career as a leader at Washington Metro, and I believe you left there as what, a deputy chief? I think you were
deputy chief in charge of their special operation division. Right. I've been for 5 years.
And you were at the center of all the big stuff going on in DC for a long time. I'd love to see that book. I'd read that book.
All the protests. What's interesting is there's a lot of stuff there, whether it's a protest, there are major events, the world events that you were seeing play out on the stage of Washington, D.C. Yeah. But then even take it up to look at the 2017 shooting of the Republican baseball team.
Oh, yeah.
I was involved in some of those. And I still remember going into the FBI brief when the Republican baseball team was so furious at the FBI saying this is a random act of violence. This guy has the names of Republican baseball members in his pocket.
Random. Yeah.
And I still remember walking in with that agent, the agent's telling me what he's going to go in and brief, and thinking to myself, good luck, buddy. You're on your own on that one. Yeah, I don't buy it. And I wasn't even shot at that day. There's no way you can sell that to me. You're not going to sell it to these people on the other side of this door.
It was the Capitol Police. Weren't the protective detail for Steve Scalise? Wasn't those were the two guys or gals that stopped it?
Yeah, it was David Bailey, one of my DPD agents, and Crystal Griner, a female DPD agent,
right?
That actually started the firing back, and it was David Bailey that actually shot and killed the individual.
That's a story in itself, right there. You got a lot of stuff that you can write.
Yeah. That would be a great guest to have.
A lot of politics behind that one too. So yeah, they actually both ended up getting the IACP Officer of the Year award.
Right, I remember that.
After that, fantastic folks, and I'll tell you, the president came out to the hospital that night when Crystal Griner was in the hospital. I'll tell you a quick little story. So, Park Police, flies into MedStar. MedStar Washington is one of your trauma 1 level centers.
Right. Level 1
in Washington, D.C. I've been there for many police shootings.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, sadly. The Park Police helicopter lands, and I know many of the medics from Park Police, and there's 5 rooms in the ICU there in the MedStar, really, trauma center. And I still remember them taking, one of the gurneys in there, and the medic comes walking out, and he looks over at me and goes, "Hey, Steve, your officer in there doesn't look good at all. I don't know if he's going to make it. You probably need to go in and talk to him."
Oh,
man, I'm reliving this as I'm sitting here because it's kind of dark. It's cold. You see the blue walls, and I think to myself, oh shit, that's the last thing, I want to hear about one of my officers. And I remember opening up the screen and walking in there, and it was Steve Scalise. It was an officer, Steve Scalise. And I was like, oh man, he was in really, really bad shape. He is very lucky to have made it.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Well, again, another great story. So, Craig, do you have any final thoughts, any questions that we haven't asked? We could go on and on, but we got to give this man a break.
No, I mean, this has been an excellent discussion, and I've enjoyed listening to it. I would simply ask, maybe in closing, Steve, what would be your message to the Chicago police officers, the rank and file, who have had to live through this terrible episode where they were told to stand down and not go to fellow officers in need of help? I just can't imagine what's going through their minds right now. They've got to be demoralized and just feeling terrible about what happened. What do you say to them? If you're the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, what kind of message do you give them if you're in that position?
So if you're looking at it from what is Steve Sund message to them versus Steve Sund as the Chicago superintendent, if I was the guy in charge right now, my message to them is, hey, here's my letter. We'll see you. Have a nice day. But from Steve Sund, who I am, I'd be like, whether it's the Chicago Police Department, New York, you see some of those protesters just berating the New York City police officers online as they're standing online and stuff like that. Is you need to make your position known to your higher ups that you need leadership, you need proper guidance, and this idea that you raised your hand, you're putting your life on the line. You're putting your life on your line for your fellow citizen. You're not putting it on for someone's vote or politics. And we need to fight to get that out of policing once and for all. Sick and tired of it. And if you can't get the proper leadership, you guys are, guys and gals that are doing the hard work are going to look elsewhere. I think these agencies that are out there, whether it's Seattle, Portland, New York, San Francisco, any of them that are facing this with LA, they're facing these politically charged environments. They need to start speaking up through their union, saying this is unacceptable that they're being caught in the middle and being used as pawns.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point.
Well, again, thank you, Steve. You are, as I mentioned before, you are our very first guest, and you are a welcome guest. What a wonderful conversation we've had with you today. I want to remind everybody, again, Courage Under Fire. If you haven't read Steve Sund's account of January 6th, you got to read that, okay? It is totally unbelievable what happened. He gives it in great detail. He's backed everything up. He's got all the facts and the figures and the evidence. It's not just opinion, it's evidence. And it's also his thoughts, his feelings about what happened on January 6th. You can also hear him. We did 3 episodes with Steve earlier this year in January, right around the January 6th anniversary, and before Trump was inaugurated. So a lot of that stuff happened before Trump inaugurated, before he, again, pardoned the January 6th people. But it's an interesting 3 episodes, and tie that in with reading the book, and you will become an expert at January 6th, and you will learn things you never even heard before. So please read the book, listen to the podcast. Steve Sutton, how can we thank you? What a great guest. Come back. Maybe we'll get the Chicago people to come on and we can come on and have a debate.
I'm happy to, but it's an absolute honor to be on here. I appreciate everything all of you do. Craig Floyd, thanks for being the person that keeps, Citizens Behind the Badge going and pushing for the hard work of the men and women, but all of you are there supporting it. That's the most important thing. We've got a great organization, and anything I can do to support you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You've been listening to Heroes Behind the Badge. Steve Sutton, clearly a hero behind the badge. You hopefully have listened and heard his first 3 episodes and heard this one, and you'll know why we call him a hero behind the badge. This is Dennis Collins signing off for Bill Erfurth and Craig Floyd. We'll be back soon with another edition of Heroes Behind the Badge, brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge. Contact us at citizensbehindthebadge.org. See you next time.
So I want to encourage everyone to go out and grab Stephen Sutton's book, Courage Under Fire. It's an amazing book, an amazing read, something everybody needs to see.